Activity 5.1, Modeling Sedimentary Basins. We're going to be looking at the formation of the sedimentary basins reflective of that of in Ohio, where we're looking at sediments that are being transported from the Appalachian Mountains into the Ohio Basin and should reflect those depositional environments of which they were deposited in. So from marine to non-marine type environments, we should see that reflected within our sedimentary tubes that we're going to be producing here with the kids today. In order to go through and do this, items that we're going to be needing are going to be our Wendrowski columns with stoppers on each end. We have our gravel, we have sand, and we have a clay, sand, soil mixture just dug up from out back behind the school. Along with that, we have our water that we'll need to add last, a spoon to scoop all of that in. And we will also need our rock kit. To start this off, we're just going to have the students go ahead and put together their water columns or their sedimentary depositional environment columns, and then we're going to explore further what that is going to reflect and how it correlates to what we see in Ohio today. So at this time, I'm going to ask the students to take their spoons and choose one of the three items to insert into their Wendrowski column. So they got to remove one end, keep one end plugged in there, and go ahead and just put 1 or 2 scoops of each item into your tube. And then the last item to go in is going to be your water. And finally, go ahead and take the water that I provided to you and go ahead and dump that in. We want this to be maybe about half full of water because we're gonna end up tipping it on its side, and we want that water level not to go all the way up to the surface, so we show a terrestrial environment also. Take your cap, make sure it's sealed on there nice and tight. I've went ahead and done one myself. And we're gonna shake these guys up. Now here's our water that's moving, so we're transporting, we're weathering materials, and we have some erosion that's going on. And then we're just gonna tip it over on the side relatively quickly. So going from the Appalachian Mountains over here into the western portion of Ohio. So this should be reflective of different rock types that form as a result of these materials being deposited during that time period. So in their rock kits, it asks them to take out samples 13, 15, 18, and 21. What I'm going to ask them to do is place those rocks where they think they belong relative to the depositional environment we see within their tubes based on their grain size and their textures. So we should be able to predict where those would fall and what we would see within those regions. So go ahead and place those rocks right next to your tubes in the order you think they would fall based on their grain size. Good. Now if we go over here and look at Isaac's, he went ahead and placed 18, 15, 13, and sample number 20. Isaac, why did you place 18 where you did relative to your tube?
Because the sediment size is larger in this one, just like it is in the tube, and then gets smaller as it goes out.
So do you think that grain size would be more representative of a shallow marine environment, a land type of environment, or a deep ocean type environment?
Like a land type of environment.
Like land type environment. We see on yours, Lauren, that we go ahead and place the rest of those. You went through sample 15, 13, and then we placed sample 21 all the way down there on the end. It looks like in the deepest part of the water. Why did you place that one there?
21 is the finer sediment, so it's going to be less like the land one that Isaac had and more like the one that's going to be in the deeper oceans.
Good. So based on these grain sizes, we're able to predict if it's what type of environment that we have here, where we have a terrestrial type environment, we have a transitional environment, more of a beach-like environment with sample number 15, which is going to be our sandstone. We get into our shallow marine environment, which is going to be our darker shale here, number 13, and then in our deep ocean environment, which is reflective of our chalk, which is going to be our very fine grain materials that are deposited out in the deepest water. Now, within these, very important for the oil and gas industry in Ohio, because it is this depositional environment that has extended from the Appalachian Mountains into Ohio's sedimentary basin, where we see the change in water level over time, over millions of years has occurred, and it's left these different layers stacked on top of one another vertically within a column of rock like this. And it's through that deposition of those fine grained materials in that shallow marine environment where we get a lot of our Biotic materials are very organic materials that are ultimately going to produce our hydrocarbons, and that's where we're looking for our oil and gas, is within those shallow type marine environments like our shales. So here's one that has already been produced and has sat overnight, and you can see the clarity of the water, and now you can definitely see the layers of going from coarse grain to fine grain materials the further you go out into the depositional environment. Jobs that are related to this type of activity would be, our mud loggers that are out on the site, our geophysicists, and our petroleum geologists, and even just geologists themselves. As they're seeing these drill cuttings come up through the hole and they're exploring these areas, they're looking for grain size, mineralogy, all of these things that are going to be relatively important for the production of hydrocarbons and where they're trying to target these areas.